to the horror. Hello everyone and welcome back to the Horror Hotel, and in today's video we're going to be doing a review of the amazing horror film, this one right here. I don't know if you can read that, but it says Hellraiser. I don't know how good you can read it, but yeah, the amazing film Hellraiser. Now we're going to be starting off with the main cast, and with the main cast we're starting off with daughter Kirsty, father Larry, stepmother Julia, and Uncle Frank, and of course everyone's favorite, the Cenobites. And now for the plot. Kirsty's father and stepmother Julia move into Larry's childhood home, and Kirsty and her boyfriend move into a room nearby. You learn that Larry has a brother named Frank, to whom you figure out Julia was having an affair with. You also learn that he was secretly using a supernatural puzzle box that is later named the Lament Configuration. That he, in a very horrible, demented, torturous way, learns that it summons interdimensional demons known as the Cenobites, which in the later films start to get names through their popularity. So, like, of course, what's labeled as the lead Cenobite in this film eventually becomes named Pinhead, and then you have, Butterball, Chatter, and I don't remember what they named the female one, but, they start to gain names through their popularity. And you learn that Frank escaped from the Cenobites without their knowing, but he has to build himself back up. Literally, like, cell by cell, everything. But he has to absorb the blood from others, which Julia is the one that helps him in this by bringing men back to the house with the insinuation, of course, that there's going to be sex, but she ends up killing them, and he then there absorbs them so he can gain things like his muscles and everything, and eventually his skin to bring him all back together. Kirsty, without knowing the power of the puzzle box, ends up opening it herself, and the Cenobites come for her, but she decides to trade Frank's life for hers, knowing that he escaped them. The Cenobites return, and they take back Frank in, of course, the original, similar demented way they did the first time, but decide to also take Kirsty's. But she's able to solve the puzzle box, sending them all back to their dimension. Now for my overall thoughts on the movie, because I do have some loves, but also some kind of hates with this whole film. Starting off with number one, the film is a really slow burn. So what I mean by that is it has a very slow kind of third, almost 2/3 of the film is pretty slow, but it's a lot of suspenseful buildup. So it's not exactly what I would call boring. It's just, if you're of course in it for the Cenobites, then you're going to be waiting a little while because they don't show up until, again, about the 2/3, final third area of the film. Number two, Frank and Julia's relationship is so stinking lame. I absolutely hate it, purely because I started to think that Frank's dick was supernatural because she just, latches onto him after, one sex session, and it's, literally, he completely hypnotizes her, but, beyond a way that, we'd see as, that makes sense. Not really, because she goes through, all these, flashbacks and just these really just wild scenes of what's going through her head, and it's very strange. I just overall hated that whole relationship. Bull crap. I just kind of wish they would have found a better way to do it, but it is what it is, and that's just what they went with. Number three, the Cenobites do show up quite late in the film. It's one of those things, you definitely see more of the Cenobites in the second and the third installment, but the very first one, I kind of like how they did it. It was like this build up. You understand that there's this supernatural essence going on with this film. And all of a sudden you finally see what it builds up to. You see this puzzle box, and you see that, okay, this thing clearly has supernatural abilities, and these beings can come. And I think it's a complete and awesome payoff, because the way they're designed, they have this kind of leather get up, but then you see ripped open parts of their body, and of course lead Cenobite, later named Pinhead, has these pins all jammed in his head all over the place, and it's because of their image and how different they are from what we're used to, and of course what's natural to the world is what makes them so terrifying, and they always come in this white light, foggy essence. And of course legendary Doug Bradley, playing as the lead Cenobite here, does an absolutely phenomenal job of the dialogue and just the deepness of his voice that really sells Pinhead's power and how he just doesn't care, and he's just here to claim the soul. And because of course he kind of gives into the idea of being oh, yeah, if you bring us Frank, maybe we'll spare you. But if you basically jerk us around, he's like, we'll tear your soul apart. And he just plays the part amazingly. He eventually does give up in some of the later installments to the point where, like, Hellraiser was going on this complete just path of destruction. So eventually he gives up, and I'm kind of glad he did, because he got out when he could. Overall, this film is pretty slow the first half, but I think the second half pays off completely. The Cenobites absolutely sell this film completely. They are what people think of when they think of the films, or the film Hellraiser, is the Cenobites. If I had to give this film a rating, I would give it about a 7 out of 10. It's not a perfect film. It's one of those things that was the first of its kind in how it did things, and that's what really made things different, and just overall really had that impact with people, and how the Cenobite characters were created as just these heartless, no caring, only pain and pleasure, but there's not really a difference for them. Pain is pleasure and pleasure is pain, and just their whole dynamic is so different. It's super cool. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this review of the film Hellraiser. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, and of course a thumbs down if you didn't. And I will see you all again very soon.